The more we hear from Andrea Johnson, the more it's looking like IDAC fits the description of being a rogue unit. Welcome to the Political Insider. This episode is brought to us by our friends at Trade Nation. They sponsor this episode. They give you access to trade international markets or local markets or individual shares, currencies, commodities, all these things that you've never had access to trading before. If you want to trade financial markets, Trade Nation is the platform for you. Visit them on tradenation.com and support them because they support us. At the Madlanga Commission, we continued to hear from Andrea Johnson, and when asked why her team were targeting the political killings task team of Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, Andrea Johnson used the ultimate excuse. She didn't know. She didn't know they were targeting the PKTT, despite being the person who signed the summonses. What summonses did she sign? Well, she signed summonses to actually access documents relating to the promotion of leadership within the PKTT, as well as records concerning the appointment of crime intelligence head Dumisani Khumalo, who seems to be the person that IDAC is besotted with. Dumisani Khumalo, that seems to be all they're after, that and HR. They seem to have decided that HR is where they were going to bring political killings task team down by questioning some of the appointments that they had made. Now, IDAC used the complaint that was conveniently submitted by Member of Parliament Fadil Adams, and they used this as a basis to investigate the political killings task team, despite the fact that Adams made no mention in his complaint of the PKTT. Now, the evidence, Matlape Selo has been on fire, and she has literally brought Andrea Johnson to the point of resigning from her position, and I think costing her some many sleepless nights as well. And she has dismantled Andrea Johnson to the point that the PKTT, and pointed out that the PKTT was unrelated in any way to Adams' complaint, which had focused on irregularities in crime intelligence, not just in that unit. Adams had in fact claimed that former police minister, and this of course will surprise exactly nobody, former police minister Becky Cele had personally misused the Secret Service so-called slush fund or funds. But IDAC chose, based on that complaint, not to investigate Cele and his misuse of funds, but focus on Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi's unit instead, using Adams' complaint about something else as a justification for this. So when it was proven was that the IDAC had spent an inordinate amount of time and resources looking into the issue of irregular appointments. And as I said, especially the one of Dumisani Khumalo, it seems to have driven IDAC to distraction. Clearly, this guy had really got up their skin. And I think that what they realized was that every bit of work that the PKTT was doing, and every bit of their success was based on the intelligence work that was being done by Khumalo and his team. When he did appear at the commission, he seemed to be very organized and very, very well informed as to what he was doing, kind of the opposite of what we're hearing from Andrea Johnson. And it comes as no surprise that they were successful because they had good intelligence. And clearly, people within IDAC had made the calculation that getting rid of Khumalo gets rid of the effectiveness of the PKTT. The evidence that was most damning actually comes quite recently, and it comes from an unexpected source. And that is Kat Matlala's, cop ally, Fanny Nkosi, who explained that quite recently, after, you remember about a month or so ago, a judge turned down the plea deal that IDAC had arranged with Kat Matlala because it was quite a bad deal. After that deal had fallen apart, suddenly IDAC officials visit Fanny Nkosi in jail, right? And they try to get him to incriminate Khumalo as well as suspended police chief Fanny Masemola. Now, Nkosi has submitted a complaint to the commission that the IDAC chief investigator, or one of them, Sunil Balacham, accompanied by 8 of his colleagues, had asked him to disclose what he knows about any corrupt relationship between Kat Matlala and Masemola and Khumalo and everybody else involved with, real crime fighting. Balachan was not interested in the relationship between Matlala and Shadrach Sabia and Feroz Khan. All he was interested was Matlala's relationships, whether they were any at all, with anybody associated with Nkonazi and his team. Now, Nkosi's team, just to add a little bit of fuel to the fire, has now accused IDAC of intimidation and abuse of power. And needless to say, we could see legal action starting. The war between IDAC and their allies and the PKTT and their allies is still raging. One wants to stop criminals from doing what they're doing, and the other one wants to stop the policemen from doing what the policemen are paid to do. But the IDAC team, which is on the ropes, seems to be totally committed to stopping investigations. However, they are losing this fight. We recently saw that the president accepted the resignation of Andrea Johnson, but the question is, will the people responsible for the leadership of our criminal justice system, when will they start acting? Or have we just outsourced this all to the commissioners at the Madlanga Commission? Right? Where is our acting police minister, Feroz Kachalia? When is he going to talk about this? When is the Minister of Justice, Mamaloko Kabai, going to do anything? When is the president going to do anything? I know that's a big stretch to expect them to do anything. Or are they just sitting back with a bowl of popcorn watching the Madlanga Commission, hoping that Justice Madlanga will resolve the issue for them? At some point, we need leadership. You've got to remember that all of these bodies, IDAC, IPID, we're running out of flippin' letters, right, are all established by our political leadership. They're busy fighting. It is like children fighting in a home. At some point, the parents have to intervene. When do our politicians actually start doing something about this rampant problem that we have inside of our criminal justice system? Because the country is burning. And it seems like the commissioners at the Madlanga Commission are the only firemen available. Something has to be done, and I can tell you what you can do. You can help us spread the word by subscribing to Political Insider. We know that about half the people that watch this haven't subscribed to the channel. So please do me a favor. Just hit that subscribe button below. It doesn't cost you anything. You will then get to watch Political Insider every day. They'll deliver a reminder to you every day when we release a new episode. Okay. We said some wonderful things about our finance minister, Enoch Godongwana, but it seems like he has capitulated to the political realities. You will recall that we heap praise on Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana for being the only politician, seemingly, who is trying to protect taxpayer money in this country. We're not hearing it from any other cabinet minister or politician in this country. Remember, we explained what a wonderful thing it was that he tried to stop the Minister from Higher Education from paying his mate 11 million rand for 2 years' work as to run NSFAS, while NSFAS is in a desperate measure. Right? 11 million rand. He said that is more than what the president earns. He said no. And we were very praiseworthy of his actions when he withheld money to errant local municipalities and metros who are wasting taxpayer money. But perhaps we spoke too soon. After he finally took the brave action of holding what is called the equitable share. The equitable share is when central government give money to local government for services that have been promised to poor and indigent households within those municipalities, for water, for electricity. So it's a bit of a top-up that the government gives. Of course, local government, being as wasteful and as badly run as they are, take that money and generally use it for comradely type of stuff. All of those municipalities and metros from which he withheld money are ANC dominated or ANC controlled, even if they've got a kind of a puppet mayor as we have in the city of Tshwane, for example. It's still ANC controlled. Metros like we have in Johannesburg, even where they don't have a outright majority, they control the coalition. And obviously, somebody must have tapped poor old Enoch Godongwana on the shoulder and reminded him that local government elections are looming. And the cities and towns not delivering services because they've squandered all the money, the potholes getting deeper, the water flowing through the streets and not through the taps, the street lights only working during the day, is not going to do well at local government elections. So being a disciplined member of the glorious movement, Enoch Godongwana has backed down and will release the money at the end of July. So despite non-compliance, the ministry cited service delivery concerns. Yeah, the old chestnut. Sorry, we need to give you more money even though you're stealing it, just in case some of it goes towards fixing a pothole or two. He did warn. He warned. December payments would be withheld if the municipal financial management did not improve. But just take a quick look at your calendar and you might confirm that there's an odd thing that happens this year, and that is December comes after November. So December, after the local government elections, when we'll have new people in power, that's when the finance ministry will then take a look at how well the previous administration would have run those local governments. It'll be after the local government elections, so voters might be lulled into saying, well, you see, as it turns out, these guys can run the city. Because suddenly we may see a surge in service delivery. Obviously, it's doubtful that that would happen, but it could happen. I mean, this is as close as you get to election interference, but who am I to point that out? Needless to say, the South African Municipal Workers Union, probably the people that created much of the problem, have welcomed the decision, saying that thousands of its members had not been paid due to the lack of municipal funds because of this withholding of the equitable share. They called the actions of withholding the money as being unnecessary, despite our lived experience as South Africans who suffer daily from these SAMWU members not doing their work. Right? They say, oh, it's been very unfair, please give us money, and we will continue to not do our work. They have warned that two of the country's metros, Nelson Mandela Bay and Mangaung, have been singled out as municipalities that had not complied with any of Treasury's demands. The other municipalities have said, oh, silly us, we'll do something. Those municipalities have basically told the finance minister to go to hell. We'll run the city the way we like and you can keep your money. Well, they're getting their money anyway. Now, of course, the metro that concerns the most people is the city of Johannesburg, South Africa's biggest city. They recently announced that 13 financial misconduct cases involving more than 4 billion rand have been referred to an independent disciplinary board, and everybody clapped. This was wonderful. This was signs that the city of Johannesburg was doing something. However, here comes the big however. They refused to disclose the identities of the implicated officials or details of their fraud. So they've just said 4 billion rand has been stolen. We've got these people. We're not going to tell you who it is or what they did. The Deputy Mayor of Johannesburg, Leyiso Masuku, herself in trouble with the law for PPE fraud during the COVID pandemic, said, and you've got to love this because you've got to take it from whence it comes, consequence management will be pursued wherever the facts and the law require it. Obviously, this didn't apply to herself. She clearly wasn't talking about herself when she said this. The disciplinary proceedings against these people were considered in committee, behind closed doors. The public and media were excluded. All documentation was withheld in the open council agenda. So in other words, the rest of council couldn't even get these details. It doesn't help that Kodongwana pointed out that Treasury was not finished with these errand municipalities and payments could be held in December if there's no improvement in compliance, because that's after the election. The reason we have these problems is not because of politicians stealing. Politicians are always going to steal. The problem is that our electorate doesn't hold them to account. The system only works if you vote in different people when the people who have done the job do a bad job. That's the only way it works. According to another beauty, the Minister of COGTA, the Traditional Government and Cooperative Governance, Velenkosini Tlabisa from the IFP, he said the truth is that we should not allow a situation that could collapse councils before November. To which I say, Minister Tlabisa, why not collapse councils before November? That way, at least, maybe this will sober up the electorate and they'll make smarter choices. Remember, if you need to film a podcast as good as this one, visit podcast-rooms.co.za and you too can film in a glorious studio like this and have a production that's this good. Now we have to ask the burning question: why is the Gauteng legislature so keen on supporting Venezuela? Gauteng supporting Venezuela. That's not really a sentence I ever thought that I would be saying. But it's come to light that there was a delegation from the Gauteng legislature, which included the Speaker, Marikana Masupu, who visited Venezuela at the discount price to taxpayers of only 5.9 million rand. They decided that a 12-person delegation should go at the end of 2025 to an international tourism conference in Venezuela. I'm not making this up. This was despite the fact that at the time Venezuela was on the brink of being attacked and their leader being captured by the Americans. Right? The visit was meant to last 12 days, and it included attending this conference. But eventually only 5 people pitch up at this conference. The others go to Dubai, where they were told, hang on a second, you can't go to Venezuela because there's a state of emergency there. But the 5 intrepid people, which included the Speaker, Masupu, decided to go to Venezuela anyway. Right? And boy, were they determined to get there, because they couldn't get a direct flight from Dubai to Venezuela as they planned. So they went from Dubai to Italy to Cuba to Venezuela. I mean, you must really want to go to Venezuela, right? And this speaker is quite the traveler, because her last trip was last week when she went to New York. But let's go back to the Venezuelan junket. The conference ran from 28th of November to the 1st of December. It's unclear what the intention of the delegation was for the other 8 days, because remember, they were there for 12 days. What they hadn't factored in was this whole US action that was about to happen, and there was a deep state of emergency in Venezuela. The rest of the delegation didn't leave Dubai. They left Dubai to come straight back to Johannesburg. So they went from Johannesburg to Dubai and back again. After being at this conference for 1 day, the speaker and her executive were told by the SA embassy to get the hell out of Venezuela because it was getting too dangerous. Now, the breakdown on how they spent the money is fascinating. 3.3 million rand of our tax money was spent on air travel. 900,000 rand was spent on accommodation. 250,000 rand was spent on other transport. 34,000 rand on travel services, must have been the travel agent, and 1.5 million rand on daily allowance payments. Each of those people got to pocket, all 12 of them got to pocket 125,000 rand for their daily expenses. I presume they didn't have to pay that back when the bulk of their trip was cancelled. But this isn't the Gauteng province's first controversial trip. Deputy Speaker Nomvaya Mhlekaza Manamela was paid more than 72,000 rand in stipends for a trip to the UK, Canada, and Cameroon The only problem is the trip never took place. And a member of the legislature, Lesego Makubela, was paid 43,000 Rand for a study tour to Washington and New York that never took place either. But back to the trip to Venezuela. What's possibly more alarmingly was that brand South Africa was exhibiting at the event. Why? Why would a brand South Africa or the province of Gauteng be involved with a tourism summit in Venezuela? Venezuela's bankrupt. Nobody from Venezuela is going to visit South Africa. And South Africa is not going to go to Venezuela because there's no food available in Venezuela. So what was the intention? It was just really a holiday. It was just really a meeting, a comradely meeting between some, people that still think that the Cold War is raging. But really what it is at the end of the day is an outrageous waste of taxpayer money. These are the people we have voted for. Let's remember November the 4th is coming. Get ready. This is your last opportunity to register to vote. If you haven't, please go and register to vote so that we can get rid of people like this. Thank you so much for joining us on the Political Insider. We'll see you again soon.